people who normally use an electronic tuning device have had a lot of difficulty learning to tune a temperament according to classical methods. So I've worked on a method that those people in particular should be able to find easier to do. It starts with the 4 contiguous thirds that many of the modern temperament sequence start with. But hopefully I'm going to be able to help you learn to do that most difficult part a little easier than some other methods show. There is a great value in the contiguous thirds in that it divides the temperament octave, the F3 to F4, into precisely 3 equal parts. And once that is done, you can rely on F3, A3, C sharp 4, F4, and A4 to be virtually perfect. Virtually perfect. Okay, I have the A4 already tuned to the tuning fork. So my first interval will be the octave A3 to A4. I hear a beat in the octave, but I don't know whether A3 is sharp or flat. So the best thing to do is to flatten the note that you're unsure of first to see if it makes the interval better or worse. Well, that made it worse. That means the octave is wide. Now I want to narrow the octave just until the point where I hear the beat stop. In approaching the octave from the wide side as I just did, more than likely the result is a 4-2 type octave. If I were to approach it from the narrow side, I would probably have a 2-1 type octave. The octave has a nice still and beatless sound, which is the goal in this method. The next interval then will be F3 to A3. That's a major third, and this you may have a lot of difficulty with. What does the 7 beats per second sound like? You don't really need to know that. All you need to know is that it's a moderate kind of sound. That would be very fast and sour sounding. That would be slow, too slow. We're looking for a kind of in-between sound. Now, just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to start with the F3 to A3 being a little slower than I know that it should be, to show you how this system virtually self-corrects. So this is my estimate. Now I tune F4 to F3. Again, I make the interval wide. And narrow it just to the point where I hear the beat stop. So at this point, this octave is correct with itself. It has the same sound, the same relation between both notes as the A3 to A4 octave has. So by itself it's correct. Now we want to tune a major third above F3 and A3 between A3 and C sharp 4. The best way to approach that is to make both intervals beat exactly the same at first, which conveniently they really do. Now we know that that's not quite correct because they are not supposed to beat exactly the same. The top major third of any 2 contiguous thirds must beat a little faster than the lower. Now the difference between the two is a small difference. A 4 to 5 ratio is a small difference. Okay, it's not the smallest difference that exists between any two chromatic thirds. That's an even smaller difference. That ratio is about 15 to 16. So the point is that the small difference of a 4 to 5 ratio is an easily heard difference. Okay, I've made a C sharp 4 beat just a little faster than the F3 A3. So now I have 5 notes tuned, and if all contiguous thirds ascend evenly in that 4 to 5 relationship, all 5 notes are correct. But unfortunately that has not worked out. There is a very large difference. And here, the difference is inverted. The lower major third beats faster than the upper. That indicates a fairly substantial error of perhaps 2 cents or more. So, when the top major third beats too slowly, as it does in this relationship, the top is slower than the bottom. If that's so, if the top major third beats too slowly, then that means that the bottom major third beats too slowly. So that means I must flatten F3 to make it beat faster. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I've made myself a new estimate. Now deliberately this time I have overcorrected to show you how the system works the other way. If you've made an estimate that where F3 is too flat. Now, so I must retune F4 to F3. And now I must listen to the relationship between F3, A3, and A3, C sharp 4. And again, they beat about the same, so I'll have to sharpen C sharp 4. Now I'll listen to all 4 contiguous thirds. And here again I have the problem of the lower third being faster than an upper. And at the top, there is too much of a difference to be considered a 4 to 5. So again, if the top major third beats too fast, then it means that the bottom third beats too fast. So now I'm going to go for a real and true estimate. Now I do not know what 7 beats per second sounds like. I never try to time it against a clock. I only listen for this moderate sound, and that's all I really have to do. Because if this estimate that I have just made is not correct, the system will correct it just as I showed you. It would just be a smaller correction that I would make. So I have moved F3, so now I must move F4. Now I must listen to the relation between A3 and C sharp 4. And there's a little bit too much of a difference there. So I'll flatten C sharp just a little bit. And with just that one estimate that I made, I apparently have a set of contiguous thirds that will work for me. Listen carefully to the gradual increase of beats in all four contiguous thirds. It can sometimes be useful to start at the top and listen for the gradual decrease in speed. The top F4, A4 major third, generally this is a little bit high on the keyboard to listen to major thirds. We don't want to compare chromatic thirds up here. Like that. It's too fast to be really discernible. But when constructing the set of contiguous thirds, this major third is absolutely key to judging whether the bottom three contiguous thirds are correct or not. So this is kind of a buzz, but if it beats slowly enough to be easily heard, it means it's too slow. And if it beats so fast that you can't even hear the beats, or it sounds kind of sour, then it's too fast. That's all you really need to know. You don't need to know how many beats per second it is or to be able to count them. So now that I've done that part, that was the most difficult part. The rest is extremely easy. The rest is extremely easy. Let's go back down to the lowest three notes that I tuned: F3, A3, and C sharp 4. Ask yourself which notes I could tune as a fourth or fifth from F3. The answer is A sharp 3 and C4. You may think of A sharp 3 as B flat 2 if you wish. Now, to start the sequence, I want to do the easiest thing in the world as far as tuning goes, and that is to tune a pure fourth, a pure or beatless fourth. The words pure, beatless, just, or just intonation all mean the same thing. I personally like to say pure, but for the Piano Technician's Journal we are now using the word beatless. In other words, an interval where you hear no beats. That is the easiest interval there is to tune. It's much more difficult to temper an interval and try to estimate or guess whether the amount of tempering you have in it is correct or not. Even a beginner or a person new to aural tuning can hear whether there's any beat or not. I've made the interval now narrow, which is definitely incorrect. But you can hear the beat. And now you cannot hear any beat. That's what I want from the next several intervals that I tune. A perfectly beatless fourth or fifth. Let's go on to C. pure fifth. Now from A, I can tune a pure fourth up to D4 and a pure fifth up to E4. What could be easier than that? It's very simply done, quickly done. Now from C sharp I can tune a pure fifth with F sharp and a pure fourth with G sharp. So now at this point there are only three notes remaining which I have not yet tuned, and those are G3, B3, and D sharp 4. From G3 there is a fourth up to C4 and a fifth up to D4. Let's tune the fourth as a beatless fourth first. Now I compare the G3 C4 fourth to the G3 D4 fifth. And I hear a pure fourth and a very badly tempered fifth. I want to flatten G3 until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. Okay, I've done that. They both beat exactly the same. Now you will notice that both of them beat quite a bit more strongly than you're used to hearing in equal temperament. But this sequence is a process, and that at this moment is correct. I'm not counting beats. I'm only listening for the same tempered kind of sound. Okay, now moving on to B3. There is no fifth within the F3 or to F4 octave that you can tune from B3, but you can tune down to a fourth to F sharp 3 or up a fourth to E4. So I'm going to tune the F sharp 3 B3 fourth pure first. Compare the fourth that's contiguous to it, B3 E4, which beats very strongly. So now I'm going to sharpen B3 until both fourths beat exactly the same. Which they do now, and again you'll notice that both of them beat twice as fast as they do in equal temperament, but that at this moment is correct for this sequence. Okay, finally to D sharp 4, there is a fifth between G sharp 3 and D sharp 4, and a fourth between A sharp 3 and D sharp 4. If I tune D sharp first beatless or pure to A sharp 3, then the fourth G sharp 3 and D sharp 4 beat strongly. So I will want to sharpen D sharp 4 until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. Okay, once again, I have not counted any beats. I have only listened for the same tempered kind of sound. The same kind of out of tune sound between both the fourth and the fifth. Now, at this point, then, I have tuned all 13 notes of the temperament octave, and I have arrived at what is known as the Marburg quasi-equal temperament. The word quasi means almost, and it is a historical temperament that some technicians use today. Curiously enough, if you play the major thirds, they will sound the same as equal temperament. However, if you play the fourths and fifths, some of them will sound good because they're pure, but others will sound quite bad because they are tempered exactly twice as much as equal temperament. And then the fourths, pure but tempered, tempered, pure, pure, tempered, tempered, and pure again. So now I can use the very same process to convert the Marburg temperament into a true equal temperament. We'll simply go back to these first three notes that first lowest three notes that we tuned in the temperament sequence: F3, A3, and C sharp 4. From F3 I tuned A sharp 3 and C4 as a pure fourth and a pure fifth. So I need to correct A sharp 3, and I find the other fourth or fifth within the F3 to F4 octave that I can compare it to, and that happens to be, I can use a fifth here, but that's the same as the fourth below, so that won't help me. But I find D sharp 4 to which I can compare it. A pure fourth and a tempered fourth. So I sharpen A sharp 3. Until I have the very same tempered sound in both intervals, and now you can hear that it's a very slightly tempered sound. It's very nearly pure, but not quite. I move on to C, that I tuned initially pure from F, and it sounds pure, and the other note that I could tune as a fourth or fifth would be G3. And you can hear that that fourth beats rather strongly, so I will want to flatten C4 until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. Again, both intervals are just barely tempered, the way that they should be in equal temperament. I move on to A3, from which I tuned a pure fourth up to D and a pure fifth up to E. The fourth is still pure, and from D you can tune a fifth down to G3, D4 to G3. And that fifth beats strongly. Pure fourth, tempered fifth. I sharpen D4 until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. Okay, and now from A, I tuned a pure fifth with E. And the other note that I could compare that to would be B3 as a fourth. It beats strongly. I want to flatten E4 until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. Now moving on to C sharp, from which I tuned F sharp and G sharp as pure intervals. Okay, the other note that I can tune as a fourth or fifth from F sharp is B3. That beats strongly. The fifth is pure. So I want to sharpen F sharp 3. Until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. And finally to G sharp, that I tuned as a pure fourth, can be compared to D sharp above. The fifth beats, the fourth is pure. I'll flatten G sharp until both the fourth and the fifth beat exactly the same. And there, the temperament sequence is complete. Now I've arrived at an equal temperament without using any of the common interval tests, such as chromatic thirds, or thirds and sixths, or inside third, outside sixth, or minor thirds, sixths. I used none of those in the process, and yet the temperament is very nearly perfect.